Greetings, kindred. Happy full moon to you all. And yeah, I just want to thank you all for your support for, the last video I did. Yeah, my head was a little bit all over the place actually when I listened back to it. I thought, oh no. But yeah, we've had, 3 deaths in the family and a wedding, which was great. But yeah, it's just been really emotionally exhausting so far this year. And I think, many of you out there have been under some kind of pressure with all the energies and all the narratives out there that, it seems like things are pretty explosive at the moment. And yeah, so let's get into it actually. So the full moon will take place on the 7th of March, 2023 at 12:40 here in the GMT time zone, at 7:40 in the EDT time zone, and at 23:40 in the AEDT time zone. So we've got quite an eventful March actually, because, we have the full moon on the 7th. We have the March equinox on the 20th. And on the 21st, we have the new moon in Pisces. And then on the 22nd, we have Pluto moving into Capricorn. So I read from astronomy, not the traditional astrology chart wheels. So my chart wheel is based on, the true lifetime sky, which is astronomical. So yes, we have a full moon in Leo. Now, the moon in Leo, we can kind of react with ego rather than authenticity. We really need to get into our authentic self. And I really do feel this is what's happening. I feel a lot of people have come into certain realizations, but there's like this inner battle going on, or this internal battle. And the reason why I say that is the moon is in trine to Uranus. So it is easy for us to readjust our emotions. But, with the sun in Aquarius, we can tend to come across as pretty detached as well, or we can be a little bit detached from our feelings. So in that respect, the Leo energy can create this energy of like wearing our heart on our sleeves and not really being in touch with the heart chakra itself. Do you know what I mean? But I do feel the heart chakra is going through this big shift right now for many people. And, the moon is at 28 degrees. So 28 breaks down to 10 in numerology. Now, this number 10 is all about change. It's all about ascension. It's, about vibration and how we're vibing to create the atmosphere around us. And its influence is Uranus. So the 10 energy is the Uranian energy, which creates sudden changes. So I feel emotionally we're going to be going through a lot of mood swings, especially when it comes to areas, of the way we think, the scientific information, the way we act or react to things. And that's why I'm saying we really need to get into our authenticity. Now, the sun in Aquarius can help us to do that. And the sun will be at 18 degrees, but at 18 degrees, 18 is influenced by the sign of Cancer. So it can represent like the fear of the unknown, but it is an attack on the spiritual by the material. And it also can revolve, this number can revolve around deception and, arguments and, where we're not being authentic, or people around us are not being authentic or direct to our face. It's like all being done behind the scenes, so to speak. So there's an element of deception now. And I think like we're tuning into that because like Uranus does rule the higher consciousness. And in trying to the moon, it's like our instincts are telling us that there's a little bit more to this than what I first thought or what's being portrayed. Do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of energy I'm getting from that. Now, also our sun and moon, because the sun and moon are always in opposition at a full moon, are creating this T-square towards Mars, who's also at 28 degrees, but in Taurus. Now, I've spoken about Mars in my last few podcasts about when he's transiting through to Taurus, it can be very frustrating. It can be very frustrating, and we can like try and enforce things, do you know what I mean? Because there's always obstacles in our way because Taurus is a slow-paced energy compared to Mars. But, what this Mars in Taurus does bring us is determination, because Mars is not a sign that gives up, and nor is, Mars is not a planet, I should say. He's a ruler of Aries, but Taurus is also very stubborn. So we've got Mars with his determination and his high energy in Taurus that's very stubborn and very kind of like, stands his ground. So, Mars needs to learn a little bit more tolerance in the sign of Taurus because like this energy can really recharge his batteries, you know what I mean? So when he does enter into Gemini, wow, it's going to be like an animal that's just been let out of a cage. And, I've said that before about Mars when he's been transiting, like when he transits Pisces, it's like he's in deep waters and it's really hard to move fast through the deep waters, unless you've got the proper gear on. But it can be murky in the deep waters, so you can't always see where you're going clearly, so you have to use all your intuition, all your senses, like your five senses, to be aware of what is around you. So, this T-square can actually rile up a little bit of aggression or, it can, we can actually be in our ego, especially with the moon in Leo, we can actually be in our ego, which will not serve us, because it creates like this emotional volatility, where we become very sensitive. And with the sun in Aquarius at 18 degrees, I mean, when the sun's in Aquarius, we do have this higher consciousness. We do have this telepathic ability. But if we're in a negative environment, it can create a little bit of paranoia as well. So, with this T-square, we can become oversensitive to all different kinds of narratives. Do you know what I mean? It's like we've just got to be in our bonnet and really what we need to do is find that space where we can do some deep breathing exercises and just keep our energies like on a level of not just common sense, but getting more into our strategy. Do you know what I mean? Because the moon in trine Uranus can help us to do that. So, but with the moon in Leo and with Uranus transit in Aries, which has been quite erratic and very fast paced, we can tend to like miss the point, or, we can kind of jump to conclusions as well because we're not in our heart chakra space. Do you know what I mean? We're very much detached from the heart chakra right now. So any meditations around that area will be very good. Now, I would say, you know, definitely over the last 6 months, you know, it's really been the higher chakras that have been kind of overactive, you know, from the solar plexus up to the crown chakra. These are the chakras that have really been active throughout these months. So, you know, maybe meditations as well on the sacral chakra and the root chakra, just to keep us grounded or bring us back down to earth, because, you know, these chakras haven't been in effect so much. You know, we haven't had time to be creative. The energies just haven't been right for that. Although in one respect it has been, you know, so we get all these creative ideas, but it's really hard to play them out when the energies are just all over the place and the goalposts keep changing and there's more information, you know, that's constantly coming out for us to mull over. So that can be very distracting. It's been a very distracting time. And I just feel that we all need to get into a place of calm and, you know, in a place of reality as well. You know, so there has been a big shift in the awakening process. And, you know, when there is a big shift like that, and it is a continuation, I mean, you know, this awakening process is like, you know, we've had a little break, I would say, over the last week, but it's about to stir up again. And it will take us right through April, definitely into May, because, you know, even though March is eventful, you know, with the full moon, you know, the equinox, Pluto moving into Capricorn, then, you know, in April, we've got the eclipses that will begin. So, you know, that will be like the grand finale to this year's energy so far. But I do feel, you know, here in the Northern Hemisphere, you know, when the sun crosses the galactic center on the March equinox and we come into our summertime, I do feel that we'll have a bit more of a spring in our step. And I feel, you know, with the planetary energies, we will have more energy to deal with things. And I just feel like there'll be more a humanitarian aspect overall that comes in. But we really need to prepare ourselves for that, because the more we awaken, is more the resistance is thrown at us. Do you know what I mean? And so it's very much this push-pull energy all throughout this year. And we are in a 7 numerological year. So, you know, it's also going to be a very spiritual time. And this is a, you know, very much a spiritual awakening, you know, and as Pluto leaves Sagittarius, and he will return to Sagittarius when he goes into retrograde, but I'll get into that in my Pluto podcast that I do. You know, there's going to be such a shift and a change in like what he does, you know, with his exploitation, with his exposure, with his like bringing things to a close. So the Capricornian energy is very much different from the Sagittarian energy in certain respects, you know. So this is like grandfather and grandson. Sagittarius is actually the grandson of Capricorn. And Pluto, you know, he's on his own journey, basically. So all these obstacles with this T-square between the moon, sun and Mars, I mean, there are a lot of blocks there, and they're normally material ones, do you know what I mean, or physical. So, you know, like I said, you know, that can also create a lot of stomach issues, or a lot of nervous energy, especially with the sun in Aquarius, because, you know, Uranian energy and Uranus is in Aries, which is, you know, very hyped up energy. So watch out for stomach issues. And I really do feel some work on the solar plexus as well as the sacral and the root chakra will be beneficial. I think the other chakras are already very active, but they can be slowed down if we work from the solar plexus downwards, and definitely the heart chakra as well. So I feel there's a lot of emotional healing that needs to take place right now as well with many people. Now, you know, this trine we have, I mean, I do say with trines, we can take things for granted. So, you know, with the moon in Leo, we have to beware that we think we know it all. Do you know what I mean? Or, yeah, basically that. And, you know, Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, and Mercury is in Aquarius at the moment at 10 degrees. So again, change, you know. So we may be a little bit detached from our emotions because, like, mentally, we're trying to get our heads back into balance, do you know what I mean, with more logical reasoning. But what we really need to aim for is to bring the balance in between our emotions and our mentality. So right now we could be feeling a little bit out of sync, or we could be catapulting from the emotional to the mental, you know, and it's triggering. So emotionally, we can be very triggered right now. So we just need to watch out for that. But, you know, this moon trine Uranus, it's very good for public speaking, especially with the moon in Leo, because Leo is very much, you know, in the limelight. But not on a wide scale, more on a smaller, more on an environmental scale. So I would say, like, you know, when we have speakers in public and stuff like that, I just feel that a lot of information in the public arena will be very, very good. Do you know what I mean? You know, the moon trine Uranus is also regarding, you know, like computer technology and electronics. And with Uranus sextile Pallas here at 11 degrees, wow, you know, it can be very good for, like I said earlier, strategizing. And it's really about, you know, campaigns, people coming together and, you know, working on strategies and being innovative with that. But also it can be very radical. Now, the thing that I would watch out for is the moon in opposition to Mercury. So, I mean, the sun is it's not that close actually. So it's in another chart. So Mercury's at 10 degrees, 8. So there's 8 degrees in between Mercury and the sun, which is good. Because it's good because it gives us the brain space to think. We're not overloaded. So if Mercury was 4 degrees or under, you know, conjunct the sun up to 4 degrees, then we could have a mind overload. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, this gives us the brain space to actually wrap our heads around things. But in opposition, with Mercury in opposition to the moon, it can create a little bit of irritation when it comes to social relationships and differences of opinion. It can also create, like, you know, a distortion in the way we think. Our emotions can be quite unbalanced. And again, it creates nervous energy, which can lead to, like, stomach issues. And it can also create confusion. So not necessarily for those of us that are in the know, but definitely for those of us that thought we knew it all. But, you know, our instincts are telling us that, things are not what they seem. Do you know what I mean? Going again back into this element where paranoia can be, or very much self-defensiveness. And I think we're seeing that really play out more in the media sectors. And so we just need to watch out for that. So we have this beautiful kite though, the South Node, the goddess Pallas in Gemini, Mercury in Aquarius, and the South Node will actually be in Virgo. But on top of the kite is actually the North Node at 5 degrees in Aries. Now, again, this is a very kind of shifting but productive energy, especially the North Node. So we're definitely seeing some changes going on here as well. But this is where we can, make a plan or communicate in a more kind of harmonious way. With the South Node trine the goddess Pallas, we can have very strong ideals and a strength of mind. And it can also bring in a lot of clarity. We can also achieve whatever we set our minds to without being over forceful about it. Do you know what I mean? So with the goddess Pallas also in trine to Mercury, it gives us a lot of clarity, and it's good for public speaking. It's good for people's rights and activism. So again, I just feel this year, 2023, is going to be very similar to 2020 because we're going to see a lot going on the streets. We're going to see a lot of public speaking where people actually move away from, the media and come back into the public speaking space. I feel a lot more of that's going to go on this year. So with the North Node at the top of the kite in sextile to Mercury, it's like we can be heard, and we can gain an audience. So it's very, very good for the collective. It's going to gain these public speaking activities are going to gain a lot of interest because, it's very different when we speak online to people than when we speak to them face to face. When we're speaking online, there's something very superficial there. But when we're speaking face to face, it's like we're exchanging energy organically, not electronically. Do you know what I mean? It is very different energy. So, I just feel that it's going to be a very good time for public meetings. The only thing we do have here, we have a grand cross with Pluto, the North Node, the Black Moon Lilith, and the South Node. So this actual grand cross, this is all about facing the reality of our conditions. It's also stirring up this rebellion, this revolutionary energy, but it can be very destructive and dangerous. That's why we must not be in our ego when we react to things. We must think things through and be authentic and stand strong in our convictions. And that's whether we're dealing with a partner or dealing with a friend or just in a social setting or when it comes to authority. We've got to be in a place of like logic and reason, but standing strong in our convictions. And, with the sun in Aquarius, we can pick up when we're being like hoodwinked. Do you know what I mean? But we mustn't get paranoid about it or oversensitive about it. With the moon in Leo, we can tend to become oversensitive about things as well because we have a lot of pride with the moon in Leo. So again, you know, we need to take some deep breaths. You know, if we feel ourselves getting triggered because the sun, moon, you know, this T-square towards Mars with our sun and moon can be very triggering. So, you know, as we come into realizations, you know, and with all the stuff going on, I mean, especially here in the UK with the US expansion going on and other stuff going on, you know, other stuff being put out there, you know, it can be a very triggering time, especially when we feel like we're not being heard. But, you know, at the end of the day, if we feel we're not being heard, it's not that we're not being heard, it's that we're not, what we're saying is not being accepted. And I think that is the burden that we're having to bear at the moment with these energies that are coming in. So, you know, maybe we need to talk to each other. And I feel a lot can come from that when we come together as a community and talk to each other. And I feel that's already going on, and I feel that will escalate. And I think it's going to be a wonderful thing. So, you know, just with this T-square, it can bring up a lot of resentment, you know, a lot of resentment because what's being enforced on us either by, you know, personal circumstances or even global circumstances, it's going to be very triggering because, you know, with Pluto in square to Lilith, you know, it is a resentment about, you know, subservience. You know, the Black Moon Lilith was married to Pluto. She was very subservient to her husband, although very unhappy. So I think here we can see a breaking down of relationships, but these breaking downs isn't like the breaking down like Saturn's energy. Oh, and I must apologize about what I said about Saturn in my last podcast, by the way. I said Saturn would be entering into Taurus in 2024. I don't know where my head was at the time, but it's actually Uranus that will be entering into Taurus in 2024, not Saturn. You know, I think I sped Saturn's energy up a little bit there, but I do apologize for that. But anyway, going back to this Grand Cross, you know, it's like this energy, you know, and Pluto's in, no, sorry, Pluto's in opposition to the Black Moon Lilith, which is actually very confrontational because I thought it was a square which creates all this tension and resentment. But if it's in opposition, that means it's confrontation. And it's based on resentment. It's based on like, you know, no, I will no longer be subservient to you. You know, I've been dependent on you with the Black Moon Lilith in Cancer. I've been dependent on you for too long, but you're going your own way with Pluto in Sagittarius. You're doing your own thing. You know, you're being destructive in areas that go against my principles and my morals and my wisdom. And, you know, 8 is the number of Saturn. And we are seeing Saturn here at 2 degrees in Aquarius. So 2 is actually the number of the moon, the new moon. So I just feel this build up to the new moon on the 21st, the day before Pluto moves into Capricorn. You know, there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a very explosive time. You know, anything that's been simmering or brewing underneath is going to come to the surface. And yeah, like I said, a lot of meditation will be needed, a lot of deep breathing exercises. Definitely, you know, I said work from the solar plexus down to the root chakra. I would say actually from the heart chakra down to the root chakra. You know, I think the throat is actually working very well now. The third eye and the crown are working very well. We're in those energies, but we really need to ground and heal. you know, all the stuff that's been brewing under the surface that's really coming to the surface right now. And we also have this stellium in Pisces, which basically, you know, is quite overwhelming, this stellium, because we have, I won't include the North Nodes because the North Node's a little bit further away in a different star sign, but we have the goddess Juno, almost in conjunction, well, just in conjunction with Venus. And then there's Venus is in conjunction to Chiron, Jupiter, and Vesta. I'm going to include the goddess Juno in this. So it really does mean that Venus and Chiron are in the center of this stellium, of this storm. So really with Venus conjunct Chiron, it really can represent like a low self-esteem, you know, where we're living rough. We can also suffer from abandonment issues or be experiencing abandonment issues at this time. You know, with Venus conjunct Chiron, we can feel very undervalued. But then we have Jupiter conjunct Chiron too. Jupiter will actually encourage us to, you know, leave circumstances where we are feeling undervalued, you know, where we are kept in that state of low self-esteem. So, you know, Jupiter can really bounce us out of that by making us recognize that we deserve better than what we're currently suffering right now. And, you know, with Jupiter also conjunct the goddess Vesta, you know, that can give us very strong spiritual values and a compassion also for humanitarian values and needing a connection with more people, you know, with the public on a humanitarian level. You know, we can be very passionate about our morals and principles and our spiritual beliefs. So, you know, it's really going to energize us to push ourselves to get motivated and to push forward out of like negative situations right now. So I would see a lot going on in relationships right now. If we're in a relationship where we feel we're being undervalued, where we feel we're not being, you know, respected, then we are going to have the courage to break out of that. And, you know, with the Black Moon Lilith in opposition to Pluto, and with this stellium going on in Pisces, that's definitely the area where I feel relationships are really going through major changes right now. But anyway, I'm going to move on to the March equinox chart. Okay, so the sun will rise at 8 degrees Pisces. Now, the sun rises at 8 degrees Pisces astronomically every year. And it won't be until around about the early 2070s when the sun will start to rise at 7 degrees Pisces on the March equinox. So it's like every 71.6 years, the sun will move back a degree. You know, it's the bigger cycle of our sun. So I would say in the early 2070s, around about 2071, 2072, the sun will start to rise at 7 degrees Pisces. And that is when we will come out of the crystalline energy, because the 8th layer of an aura is the crystalline. It's the information, the antenna. But when we move down to 7 degrees, you know, we will be entering into the first ray, which will be, I think, the red. And 7 is a spiritual number. And red, is very, to me, red represents like high energy, physical energy, so yeah, I'd be interested to see that time. I'm not sure if I'll be around in the early 2070s. I doubt it. But yeah, that's when the sun will start to rise at 7 degrees. But so the sun, as it, crosses the galactic center, it will be in a T-square. So the sun will be conjunct Mercury. Now, this is the chart I was looking at where it can be a mind overload because the sun is at 8 degrees and Mercury is 11 degrees. So Mercury would have already crossed the sun. So between the full moon leading up to the March equinox, I do feel we are going to go through this mind overload. And by the March equinox, we are still there, a little bit of a mind overload. So when Mercury moves to like 12, 13 degrees, then there'll be brain space again. But this T-square between the Sun, Mercury, in opposition to the goddess Ceres in Virgo, and poor Mars again is under pressure. So this T-square is against Mars. So whereas at the full moon, we have the Sun and Moon creating T-squares towards Mars, we now have the Sun and Mercury and Ceres triggering the Martian energy. With the Sun, though, conjunct Mercury, we do have a strong mind, but it can be, like I said, an overload of information, and we can get more into our ego with that. So with the sun so close to, with Mercury so close to the sun, we can actually be blinded by the light, so that can create like self-delusion or blind spots. And like too much light can be very blinding. Too much dark can be very limiting on sight. So really, we really need to be walking in the shadow of the light and the dark for balance. So again, I just feel there can be areas of blind spots at this time. And the sun will also be in conjunction to Neptune, who will be at 3 degrees in Pisces. Now, Neptune's kind of here. So with that, we can tend to have an overactive imagination. There can be a lot of elusiveness, when it comes to the narrative out there, or deception. And, even in its extreme, this energy in its extreme can create psychosis. Do you know what I mean? So a little bit of paranoia at the full moon, leading up to more like a psychotic energy can be had. Now, that's not for everybody, but that is what we could be witnessing at this time. So that would be very interesting. But again, it can be very triggering. So we need to watch out as an individual for getting into that energy, for becoming over triggered. I think for those of us that are only just coming into the know, it's like, wow, it can be very triggering because we're so far down the road now. But again, we've got to find our kindred spirits in our environments that can keep us stable, keep us grounded, and help us to feel supported. This little stellium here, thank God, Venus has moved away from Chiron, but these little stelliums are actually giving us the faith and the energy that we need. Jupiter conjunct Chiron and Vesta, Jupiter's really helping us out here when it comes to our emotions. So although it's very triggering, I really do feel it's more kind of people that are quite dominating, or, like I said, the more we come into the know, it's more the resistance that is thrown at us. And I think that's what we're going to be witnessing during this time. And it's going to be very triggering, but we really do need to stay calm, come together. I mean, like I said before, we are all resourceful as individuals in some form or way. Some of us can sew, some of us can grow food, some of us can, are good listeners. We can all help each other. But we've got to put ourselves in that place of, being willing to share, being willing to take part in a wider community that's more harmonious, that's more about strategy, that's more about, can support us in, if we're overloaded and we're confused, then we can, turn to people that have the knowledge, that have the answers, because there are answers out there. So I really do feel we're coming into our self-power at the March equinox. The sun will be at 8 degrees, the number of Saturn. Saturn will be at 3 degrees. So Saturn is now beginning to expand. Technology is going to be expanding, or our ideas, or, maybe our ability to calculate will become much more clearer. The only thing is, Saturn is in opposition to the Black Moon Lilith, who's at 9 degrees in Leo. And, this is definitely a depressing energy. It's a complete breakdown, And with the Black Moon Lilith in Leo, it's Leo doesn't like change. But 9 is an ending of a cycle. And, I just feel that, whatever's kicking off at this time, we need to stay as grounded as possible. But things are going to feel very much like we're in a rabbit hole and we can't get out of it. Do you know what I mean? So there is that energy that we need to watch out for. But, the one thing we need to watch out for again is, how we're talking to other people, or maybe how we're being spoken to as well. Because, there can be a lack of tact with Mercury square to Mars as well. With this T square, there can be a lack of tact. And, that can be very triggering. But, there is also another T square with Venus and the North Node and the goddess Juno in opposition to the South Node. I won't include the Ascendant because that's just here in the UK. And they're both in square to Pluto. Well, what this is good for, again, is for building up on social relationships with, Venus conjunct the North Node. This is all about unity of the people, and being constructive and creative. This can also bring in good karma from past actions, or we can even be creating good karma now. Remember, it's never too late to create good karma. And I really do feel around this March equinox, even though there's a lot going on, even though it's a very triggering time, I just feel people coming more and more into their self-power, not willing to put up with negative situations anymore. Being willing to move out of those negative situations and becoming more a part of a community. Community spirit, there's going to be a big shift there when it comes to community spirit. And I also feel like, you know, there's this strong sense of unconditional love. But again, there's this dominance and manipulation that can surround that. But I feel by this time we're in recognition of it, you know, but I really do feel there's going to be a lot of conflict around social reformation. I feel, you know, this is going to be a very revolutionary time, whether it's we're getting into our self-power and we're not willing to put up with crap from people around us anymore, or whether that's connected to the wider scale, you know, like when it comes to the media, when it comes to authority. And yeah, you know, but the Black Moon Lilith again, like I said, you know, it just feels like nothing seems to work out. No matter what we do, it doesn't work out. Well, that doesn't have to be in our own personal lives. Do you know what I mean? That may be for groups of people that are trying to enforce their opinions or their ideas onto us. But, you know, there's still this dark night of the soul energy. And with the Black Moon Lilith in opposition to Saturn, it is the dark night of the soul energy. And so when Lilith is in aspect to either Saturn, the Sun, or Chiron, or Pluto, it is a very much a dark night of the soul energy. And I think we're still kind of experiencing that at the moment. And even if we are already in our self-power, even if we are in the know, we will be picking up or experiencing, you know, these type of energies from other people. You know, so it's our place really to calm them and to, you know, bring them into balance, and by keeping ourselves in balance. So I've always said we can only teach by example. And I think, you know, many of us have been setting a good example out there for many years. And, you know, all the healers and, you know, all the people out there that, you know, are taking the risk to put out information, you know, we have to like give them value and respect. So I know I'm normally always talking from a global picture, but this is an event chart. But I just feel there's a lot going on. But it's funny, you know, humanity is kind of like really amazing. The way humanity is just like under severe pressure, I think that's when they come out and perform at their best. And that's what I'm seeing here. So, Kindred, I'm going to leave it there. My head's still a little bit all over the place, so forgive me. I do have the Black Moon Lilith crossing my North Node and my Mars right now, so it's a very triggering and slow-paced time for me. And she's also opposing my own personal natal Saturn. So, yeah. But I'm okay because I know what the energy is about. I can work with it and get through it. But again, thank you so much for your support. I love you all. Peace and much love.